Thank you, Mandy, and welcome to the 2022 DEI Science Summit. I'm Stephen Taylor, President and CEO of the Arthritis Foundation, and it's my honor to welcome you to this inaugural event. As many of you know, this past spring, the Arthritis Foundation published our DEI position statement, which is on our website, and it shares with you the Arthritis Foundation's commitment to being a champion of a diverse and inclusive culture that encourages, supports, and celebrates the voices and perspectives of all. Our DEI work is so important to also ensuring health equity for all of our constituents, those patients with arthritis receiving care in the United States. One of our focuses in science is to foster and grow the number of diverse healthcare providers, especially in rheumatology. We know a more diverse workforce will also help us to ensure better outcomes for all arthritis patients. We're very excited about the diversity of perspectives that you'll be hearing throughout the summit, and I want to thank all of our speakers, our volunteers, and our grantees who continue to make our science program what it is today. Special thanks to our medical and scientific advisory co-chairs, Martin Lotz and Peggy Crow, as well as our workforce development chair, Andy Chan, for their amazing leadership of our scientific initiatives, but also for their amazing partnership with our science staff, Maria Vassileva, Jason Kim, Kristen Mueller, and Suzanne Nielsen. I'd also be remiss if I didn't thank our partner, Johnson & Johnson, who shares our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and whose support is helping the Arthritis Foundation bring today's event to you. I look forward to hearing the robust and thought-provoking presentations and conversations today, and thank you all again for attending and participating. I encourage you to put your questions answered in the Q&A tab at the bottom of the slide. More interaction will help us get better, and also we want to make sure we're answering your questions as best as we can as well. And with that, I now have the honor to introduce our next presenter, the Arthritis Foundation's Senior Vice President of Science Strategy, Maria Vassileva. Maria?
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you for the great introduction and for being with us today and for the commitment of the foundation to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We really appreciate everybody joining us today because we have a very important discussion set up here, and hopefully you all agree a wonderful set of speakers and panelists lined up for the next 2 days. We wanted you to know that there have been some minor changes to the agenda that was posted on the CVent site when you registered. And the main ones I'm going to briefly mention before I start my remarks. Dr. Crow sends her regrets because of travel changes in her schedule today. She's not able to join us, but we're still going to be able to hear from Dr. Andy Chan with some perspectives on behalf of the Medical and Scientific Advisory Committee of the Arthritis Foundation, and also the keynote talk today, which was scheduled initially to start at 11:30, will actually start at 12 o'clock. But we do have Dr. Soulsby starting before that, so we hope you stay with us for the entirety of the discussion today. We will plan to end the day at 3:30 exactly, and then tomorrow we'll resume at 11 o'clock. And if you have any questions throughout the meeting, as we mentioned, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We'll select questions for each one of the speakers and then address them. And since we may run out of time, additional questions, we will make sure that we address after the meeting, and we'll send you some of the main email addresses where you can send your questions after this event. So with that, it is really my pleasure to talk to you a little bit more at the beginning of this meeting about the mission and work and priorities of the Arthritis Foundation Science team. So as you may have seen on our website or by engaging with us previously, we are engaging with the world's most creative minds to accelerate arthritis research and collaborative science in order to facilitate the development of new treatments and the creation of effective solutions for improving the patient's quality of life. Arthritis is a very complex disease. It's actually not a single disease, it's many different conditions, and they each have a different unmet medical needs. And with the help of our medical and scientific advisory committee and the many other advisory groups we interact with, we have defined a number of priorities which are outlined on the next slide. So on this slide, you will see the main therapeutic areas of focus and the priorities of the Arthritis Foundation science work as defined in our 3-year pathway plan. We have 2 major buckets of work. The biggest one is funding research initiatives and defining consensus among different stakeholders in the areas of focus, which are osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, and juvenile arthritis. And then the other big bucket of work is focused on workforce development. And in that area, you'll be hearing very shortly from the chair of the working group about the flagship initiatives, which are the Arthritis Foundation Fellowship Program. It has been in existence a very long time, but the most recent iteration of that since 2017, a very impactful program, but not the only one we have in workforce development. This year, we launched together with CARA an early career development program, and we also are going to focus today's discussion on the work that we do under diversity, equity, and inclusion. But before we talk about the workforce development work, I thought it would be useful for all of our attendees to hear at a very high level about the therapeutic area focus work that we do at AF Science. So on the next slide is a snapshot of our osteoarthritis research programs. And since 2019, we have invested over $18 million in osteoarthritis research through awards that have gone to over 18 different academic institutions. With the help of our advisory committees, we have defined the focus of this work to be on post-traumatic OA, and we're building an infrastructure in addition to a lot of expertise on our committees that work collaboratively in order to decide how to target those that are at the highest risk with the most promising therapeutics that are available. So really our focus has been on creating a clinical trial network and working toward focus on clinical trials and creating a lot of the infrastructure that's needed. So if we go on the next slide, you will see for 2023 at a high level, a snapshot of some of the programs and activities under our portfolio of work in osteoarthritis that is managed by Dr. Jason Kim. He's with us at this meeting today. And so if there is any questions about that, they can be addressed to him. But we're very proud to announce that we have a partnering research grant on ANCO OA in collaboration with another professional society, AOFAS. And we're trying to expand our focus, which has been always on the knee OA, beyond that and work on some of the more rare joints as well. And so with that in mind, we also are organizing a hip OA forum discussion at the HSS location in New York. And we're going to be hosting a meeting there in 2023 in February. I have included the link for those who may be interested in attending that in order to discuss more about the unmet medical needs in hip OA. We're also very excited this year to be announcing the initiation of an osteoarthritis imaging center at the Cleveland Clinic, which the Arthritis Foundation is funding, and also several intervention pilot studies through our FAST OA initiatives. But most excitingly, we're also planning the launch of our first multi-center OA clinical trial that's going to be funded by the Arthritis Foundation with a data coordinating center and PI at Brigham Women's Hospital. The trial is probably going to start next year, again, focused on post-traumatic OA and recruiting patients that are undergoing ACL reconstruction. So a very broad portfolio of work with a lot of exciting initiatives that they're making quick progress. But again, because there's so many different forms of arthritis and the needs are so different, in addition to osteoarthritis, which is of course the most prevalent form of arthritis, we also have a portfolio of research that we fund in the area of rheumatoid arthritis, and that's described on the next slide. So here you can see that our focus in the area of rheumatoid arthritis was defined with the help of a working group of experts from across the United States that throughout 2021 and early 2022 helped us define some priorities. And the area that was perceived to be most of need was a refractory RA, or patients that are non-responders to current therapies for rheumatoid arthritis. With that, we also continue to support some very large partnerships in the area of rheumatoid arthritis, such as the AMP-RA SLE program managed by the Foundation for the NIH, as well as the AMP-AIM program, which now that previous program transitioned into. It's a very large partnership in which both the public and the private sector are involved. But also this year, on the next slide, we have been able to develop our own portfolio of research. And in order to characterize the determinants of response and non-response to current rheumatoid arthritis therapeutic agents, we issued an RFP and are now able to announce the 4 first awardees of our RA research portfolio. This work is scheduled to start in 2023. On the next slide, I briefly wanted to also mention our partnership with the Childhood Arthritis and Rheumatology Alliance, CARA. Since 2015, the Arthritis Foundation has invested $37 million to support GA research that is mainly managed through CARA, and it has a number of different parts, some investigator-initiated grants. We're also supporting the CARE registry, which now has over 11,000 samples and data points from GA subjects. And we're also supporting the CARE annual meeting, which is the largest gathering of pediatric rheumatologists that come together to discuss the current areas of topics. In order to hear more about the highlights from the science work at the Arthritis Foundation, you could go to this link, which is a YouTube science video, and we thought we could share that in case you wanted to share with some of you colleagues who weren't able to join us today. We'll drop that in the chat as well. And then finally, on the next slide, you can see a small snapshot of the workforce development initiatives. Since 2018, the Arthritis Foundation has awarded over $3.5 million to 20 different U.S. academic institutions. And out of that, about $750,000 were funds toward diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is a much newer program for us. We started investing in the space in 2020, and Andy will shortly be telling you a lot more about this work. So this is kind of the overview of some of the focus areas for the Arthritis Foundation science team. And just as Steve said in his initial remarks, I also wanted to thank some of the people who have made this event possible and a lot of the work that I talked about at the Arthritis Foundation. So on the next slide, we have the list of our DEI Science Summit Planning Committee. This is the committee of volunteers that help put together today's agenda, and we have been discussing this event for several months in order to put together the best possible discussion for you. On the next slide, I would also like to thank the DEI Working Group, which is our advisory committee that meets to discuss just the priorities and the focus areas within the DEI space that they feel the Arthritis Foundation can contribute to. Again, we hope to have more discussions here today and tomorrow about what are some other areas the Arthritis Foundation may be able to contribute to now that you get more of a context about our work. And then on the final slide, I wanted you to see the list of our medical and scientific advisory committee. Steve already mentioned them. Martin Lotz is the outgoing chair for the committee, and Peggy Crow is the incoming 2023 chair. But today we have the pleasure to hear from one of the key members of the MSAC and also the chair of the Workforce Development Working Group. And that is Dr. Andy Chan. So Dr. Chan is a Senior Vice President of Research Biology at Genentech, where he oversees research in oncology, immunology, neuroscience, infectious diseases, and biotherapeutic discovery. Dr. Chan's lab focuses on how our immune systems protect us against foreign pathogens and yet can cause autoimmune and inflammatory diseases. He plays a key role in bridging academia, patient advocacy, and industry, and he's been a very highly engaged and dedicated Arthritis Foundation volunteer for more than 20 years. He has chaired the new Clinical Rheumatology Fellowship Program since its inception in 2017. He also leads the annual Knowles Lecture in San Francisco that is now in its 56th year, and is the medical and scientific chair of the local leadership board in the San Francisco area. Last year, he spearheaded the new patient education webinar series serving the Northern California region. And then on the national level at the Arthritis Foundation, in addition to being a member of MSAC, he's also the recipient of our 2021 Howley Prize for his outstanding contributions to arthritis research and for everything he has done as an expert on our advisory committee as a whole. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce and turn over the podium to Dr. Andy Chan. Andy.
Great, thank you, Maria. And I too would also like to thank the DEI Science Summit Planning Committee, Drs. Feldman, Gilbert, Hughes, Smith, Mantilla, and Wong for it's a lot of work, and I'd like to thank them again for pulling together this very exciting program. So I just want to give you two major points that the Workforce Development Committee has been working on for the Arthritis Foundation over the last 7 or 8 years. The earliest program that the Arthritis Foundation continues to support is the Clinical Fellowship Program. This is a program, a national program that the goal of which is to fund presently unfunded but ACGME accredited slots in adult pediatrics or med-peds fellowships so that we can increase the number of healthcare providers in the country. And the second, which I'll talk about shortly also, are the DEI activities. But let me just highlight a couple things about the fellowship programs this year and for next year. So next slide, please. So the program, Arthritis Foundation is proud to announce that there are 4 institutions that were awarded fellowship slots. These are 3-year funding opportunities that amount to a $50,000 salary support with a matching $50,000 from each of these institutions. The 4 institutions that will receive these awards for 22-23 is from Duke University, a combined adult peds program, an adult rheumatology fellowship program from UCSF, and 2 peds fellowship programs at Baylor College of Medicine, as well as the University of Minnesota in the Twin Cities. And I'd like to also thank the Arthritis Foundation for its continued commitment of over $3 to $4 million going and counting in terms of continuing to fund our pipeline of rheumatologists. So the second major initiative, one more thing, next slide, and is that the RFP has been issued. It's been open now for the 2023 applications for these particular fellowships. So we welcome institutions that have ACGME accredited but unfunded rheumatology fellowship slots for the AF funding. Next slide. The other major activity and the Arthritis Foundation has engaged on over the past 3 years is in the area of health equity and DEI. So about 2.5 years ago, the Arthritis Foundation began two parallel programs. One which was to encourage institutions to develop new curricula that would be able to address DEI. And secondly, research proposals to address DEI issues in very, very broad topics. And in 2022, the Arthritis Foundation will be funding 1-year programs to 3 different institutions to develop additional curricula. Likewise, there are 3 research initiative awards that were granted. These are 2 years of funding each. The idea over the last 3 years from the Arthritis Foundation was actually to be able to provide seed money to be able to build a community interested in DEI issues. So next slide. So the goal of these particular funding opportunities, as well as this DEI symposia, is to actually transition us to the next step, which is that we would like input from the community of how best the Arthritis Foundation will be able to continue to support, advance, and tackle these health inequity issues. So we'll talk a little bit more about this tomorrow, but the goals the plans that we have is to, over the next year or so, begin to welcome as well as to fund a few highly focused, integrated programs that really probably are going to be focused on curriculum development as opposed to basic research projects. And the goal then for this particular forum is to get input from all of you to see how we might write the RFP so that the Arthritis Foundation will have a novel way and a relatively unique niche by which we can help and support these DEI activities. So after the input, and we're going to have an additional face-to-face meeting at ACR at November 11th, we will then take all this input and then release a planning grant RFP, likely in the first half of 2023, to welcome these early pilot integrated programs. So that's part of the mission and goals of the next today as well as tomorrow. So for the remainder of this particular session, we're going to welcome a couple of presentations from the 2021 DEI Arthritis Foundation awardees.